The community center on Maple Lane smelled of burnt popcorn and cheap air freshener, the same scent that had greeted every monthly homeowners association meeting for the past 8 years. I'd been attending faithfully since buying my modest 3-bedroom house on Willowbrook Drive. Number 412, the one with the native pollinator garden and the solar panels that had become my quiet rebellion against rising utility bills. Tonight, though, the folding chairs were arranged in a deliberate circle, and the usual agenda, trash pickup schedules, holiday light contests, was conspicuously absent. President Marlene Hargrove, a retired realtor with a smile sharp enough to cut glass, stood at the center, clutching a clipboard like a gavel. "Neighbors," she began, her voice carrying that practiced warmth realtor's perfect. "We've gathered for an important discussion about community standards. After private conversations and careful consideration, we've taken a vote. Effective immediately, Ms. Clara Ellison is no longer welcome in association-led activities and events. We've decided you're disruptive to our harmony." Disruptive. The word landed like a brick through my front window. Murmurs rippled, then applause, polite at first, then enthusiastic. Tom from across the street clapped loudest. His wife Susan nodded vigorously. The Millers, who'd borrowed my lawn tools more times than I could count, raised their hands in approval. Even quiet Mrs. Delgado from the corner house joined in, her face a mask of reluctant solidarity. My chest tightened. This wasn't about my garden exceeding height limits or my refusal to contribute to the annual 4th of July fireworks fund. This was personal. Disruptive how? I asked, standing slowly, keeping my voice level despite the heat rising in my face. Because I reported the illegal dumping behind the Thompsons' property? Or because I questioned the association's maintenance fees that somehow funded Marlene's new deck? Marlene's smile didn't waver. "It's unanimous, Clara. You've created division. We're simply protecting our community's values." Unanimous. The room's energy shifted, some faces guilty, others triumphant. In my experience, neighborhood associations are microcosms of petty tyranny. People who couldn't run a city council but lord over fence colors and mailbox uniformity. But I didn't argue. Not yet. I'd lived here long enough to know Marlene's playbook. She thrived on public confrontation. Instead, I reached into my canvas tote, the one I'd brought just in case, and placed a thick blue binder on the folding table at the center. "If harmony's the goal," I said calmly, "you'll want to review this first." The binder's thud cut through the applause like a judge's gavel. Susan's clap faltered. Tom leaned forward, curiosity overriding loyalty. Marlene's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" "Your resignation from the neighborhood." I folded my arms. "Open it. Find out." Tom, ever the eager enforcer, grabbed it first. He flipped the cover, scanned the first page, then the next. His face went slack. These are financial records. Association dues." Marlene snatched it from him, rifling through with increasing agitation. Her perfectly applied lipstick seemed to fade as she turned pages. "This is invasion of privacy. Forgery." I shook my head. "Every receipt, every bank statement, every email. Public records requests, Marlene. All legal. Let me back up, because neighborhood oustings don't happen in a vacuum. They're built brick by petty brick over years of resentment. I moved to Willowbrook Heights 8 years ago, drawn by its tree-lined streets and promise of community. Single, child-free, and gainfully employed as a forensic accountant for a mid-sized firm, I invested in my home. Energy-efficient upgrades, a garden that attracted butterflies instead of requiring constant mowing. Neighbors loved it at first, borrowed my tools, asked for gardening tips, even nominated me for the beautification committee. But Marlene ran the HOA like her personal fiefdom. Dues increased annually, yet potholes went unfilled, the community pool closed for repairs that never happened. When I started asking questions, politely in meetings, about where the money went, the tone shifted. Suddenly my rain barrels violated aesthetic standards. My compost bin was a health hazard. The solar panels? Eyesore, despite being approved by city code. The real rot began 3 years back. Marlene proposed a landscaping enhancement fund, extra assessments for common area improvements. I noticed discrepancies. Payments to a company called Greenscape Solutions that shared Marlene's maiden name. Further digging, public records, because I'm thorough, revealed kickbacks. Inflated invoices, work never performed. Over 5 years, nearly $180,000 in dues diverted. $42,000 for a gazebo that existed only in renderings, $28,000 in consulting fees to Marlene's brother-in-law, $15,000 for pool chemicals never purchased. Property encroachments too. The Millers built a shed 6 feet over the line onto common land. Tom fenced an association property for his dogs. I'd documented everything quietly, not for revenge, but protection. When Marlene started the whisper campaign, Clara's difficult, Clara's antisocial, I knew escalation was coming. The binder was my insurance. Timelines, bank transfers, emails where Marlene instructed the treasurer to adjust records. In the community center, silence descended. Tom flipped to the encroachment maps, his shed prominently marked. Marlene, you said that was approved. Susan gasped at the greenscape invoices. Mrs. Delgado whispered, my dues paid for her deck? Marlene slammed the binder shut. This is defamation. Clara, you're trespassing on private matters. Private? I countered. Association funds are members' money. And public records don't lie. The room fractured. Accusations flew. Tom demanding explanations, Susan tearful about her stolen dues. Marlene called for order, but chaos reigned. You voted me out, I said, gathering my things. Fine. But this binder goes to the state attorney general. Enjoy the audits. Walking out into the cool evening air, the streetlights flickering on like judgmental eyes, I felt a mix of vindication and sorrow. Neighborhoods should be sanctuaries, not battlegrounds. In my opinion, HOAs attract control freaks who weaponize community to mass greed. The fallout began immediately. That night, texts, Marlene demanding I cease and desist. Tom leaving a voicemail. Clara, we can work this out privately. Privately? After public humiliation? By morning, the state HOA oversight board had my complaint, complete with binder copies. Local Facebook groups buzzed. Willowbrook scandal? Anonymous posts, no doubt from attendees, leaked details. Marlene showed up at my door 2 days later, makeup flawless but eyes desperate. Clara, destroy those copies. We'll reinstate you, waive your dues. Reinstate? I laughed, actually laughed. After declaring me persona non grata, the investigations accelerated. March brought auditors to association records. Marlene's enhancements unraveled. The gazebo fund diverted to her kitchen remodel, Greenscape a shell company. Neighbors divided, some apologetic. Mrs. Delgado brought cookies, confessed she'd voted under pressure. Others defiant. Tom threatened lawsuits over the shed map. I focused on work, promoted to senior forensic, ironically handling HOA fraud cases. Personally, therapy unpacked the isolation. I joined a hiking group, made real friends unbound by property lines. But Marlene's desperation grew. April. Anonymous complaints to city code enforcement about my garden, dismissed but harassing. May. A special assessment vote to fund legal defense against my complaint. June. State findings. Marlene fined, ordered to repay $180,000. Association dissolved pending reform. I sold the house profitably and bought rural acreage. No HOA, just peace. Planted a bigger garden, installed wind turbines. Yet Marlene's final ploy, a July letter begging neighborly resolution. I filed it away. The letter from Marlene arrived in late August 2026, slipped into my mailbox at the rural acreage I had purchased 3 months after walking out of the community center. The envelope was heavy cream stock, her familiar looping script on the front, Clara Ellison, handwritten as though we were still on cordial terms. I carried it inside the small cabin I was slowly turning into a home. Timber walls with stove, wide windows overlooking 20 acres of meadow and forest. No covenants, no restrictions, no HOA. Just peace. I opened it on the porch, coffee in hand, the morning air carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers. The letter was 3 pages. The first filled with reminiscences of block parties and shared recipes, the second shifting to regret. We may have overreacted. And the third landing on the real point. The association is in crisis. Legal fees are mounting, and several families face personal liability. If you could see your way to withdrawing the complaint, perhaps we could find a path forward together. For the neighborhood's sake. For the neighborhood's sake. In my view, that phrase had always been Marlene's most effective weapon, invoking collective good to justify personal gain. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer with the others that would follow, and returned to planting the fall garlic. Some requests do not deserve the dignity of a response. The months since the community center meeting had been a slow-motion unraveling of Willowbrook Heights' carefully curated facade. The State Oversight Board's investigation, triggered by my binder of evidence, moved with the deliberate pace of government bureaucracy, but with inexorable force. By September, preliminary findings confirmed misappropriation of $182,000 in association funds over 6 years. Greenscape Solutions was formally identified as a shell company controlled by Marlene's sister. The non-existent gazebo, the inflated landscaping contracts, the diverted pool maintenance budget, all documented, all irrefutable. Marlene was removed as president in an emergency vote forced by the state regulator. Tom, who had served as treasurer for 4 years, resigned before he could be removed. The Millers quietly dismantled the shed that encroached on common land, though not before receiving a formal notice of violation from the city. The neighborhood fractured along predictable lines. Some residents, those who had benefited from Marlene's selective enforcement or simply feared change, rallied around her, circulating a petition claiming I had manufactured evidence out of personal animus. Others, particularly newer families burdened by rising special assessments, began asking hard questions. Mrs. Delgado organized an informal residents group that met in living rooms rather than the community center, sharing copies of the state report and discussing reforms. Legal proceedings escalated through the fall. The Oversight Board ordered restitution. Marlene personally liable for $142,000, Tom for $38,000, and the association itself required to refund improperly assessed fees to all members. Several families faced liens on their properties when they proved unable to pay immediately. The once pristine credit of Willowbrook Heights took a substantial hit. Property values, according to the local real estate blog, dipped by an average of 6 to 8% in the final quarter of 2026. I observed from a distance. My new life on the acreage demanded attention. Clearing trails, installing a greenhouse, learning the rhythms of off-grid solar and well water. Work remained steady. My promotion to senior forensic accountant came with fascinating cases, ironically including several HOA fraud investigations across the state. Colleagues began referring to me, half-jokingly, as the HOA whisperer. Yet the attempts at reconciliation, or more accurately, containment, continued. In October, Susan from across the former street appeared unannounced at my gate, holding a casserole as though carbohydrates could erase complicity. She stood awkwardly in the gravel drive, explaining that Tom was under terrible stress, and that the shed removal had cost them thousands. "Couldn't we just put this behind us?" she asked. I accepted the casserole out of basic courtesy, thanked her, and explained that the matter was now in the hands of regulators and the courts. She left looking smaller than when she arrived. November brought the first genuine crack in Marlene's armor. The state filed civil charges against her for breach of fiduciary duty and ordered a forensic audit of her personal finances. Rumors circulated that her husband had moved out temporarily. Whether due to the scandal or the financial strain was unclear. A certified letter arrived from the association's new interim board. An offer to settle my refunded dues claim for double the amount owed, plus a formal apology to be read at the next open meeting. I instructed my attorney to accept the financial terms, but decline the public apology. Some gestures ring hollow when forced. By December, the neighborhood's holiday lights display, once Marlene's pride, was noticeably diminished. Fewer houses participated, and the grand synchronized show that had drawn visitors from surrounding areas was canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. Mrs. Delgado sent a Christmas card with a simple note. "Thank you for giving us back our neighborhood." Enclosed was a photo of the community center bulletin board, nowly papered with printouts of the new transparent budget and meeting minutes. Progress slow and imperfect. January 2027 arrived with a hard freeze and, unexpectedly, a handwritten letter from Tom. He admitted to going along to get along, claimed he had been intimidated by Marlene's dominance of the board, and offered to repay his share of the restitution directly if I would call off the dogs. I forwarded it to the Oversight Board without comment. Personal absolution was not mine to grant. Accountability was a communal necessity. Spring brought renewal in more ways than one. My acreage bloomed. Fruit trees I had planted took root, the greenhouse produced its first crops, and I installed a small wind turbine to complement the solar array. Professionally, I accepted a contract with the State Attorney General's office to consult on HOA reform legislation, a direct outcome of the Willowbrook case, which had been cited in committee hearings as a textbook example of unchecked power. Marlene's legal situation deteriorated further. In April, she entered into a settlement agreement. Full restitution plus penalties totaling $198,000, permanent bar from serving on any HOA board, and a public acknowledgement of wrongdoing posted on the association website for 2 years. The document was clinical, devoid of remorse but binding. The neighborhood itself began to heal haltingly. A new board was elected, Mrs. Delgado as president, younger families in key roles, and they implemented changes I had once suggested: transparent online finances, term limits, mandatory audits. Property values stabilized and even began a modest recovery as the scandal faded from local headlines. In May, I received one final communication: an email from the association's attorney forwarding a resolution passed unanimously by the current board. It expressed profound regret for the actions taken against Ms. Clara Ellison, and extended an open invitation to any future community events, should I ever wish to attend. I archived it without reply. Some bridges, once burned, serve better as lessons than pathways. By summer 2027, my life on the acreage had settled into a rhythm that felt authentic. Mornings in the garden, afternoons consulting remotely or drafting reports, evenings reading on the porch as deer grazed at the meadow's edge. I hosted occasional gatherings, former colleagues, new friends from the local conservation group. No agendas, no votes, just shared meals and conversation. The ousting that had once threatened to define my relationship to community instead clarified what genuine community requires: transparency, accountability, and mutual respect rather than enforced conformity. Willowbrook Heights would survive, perhaps even improve. I had already thrived elsewhere. In retrospect, the most valuable outcome was not restitution or reform, but liberation from arbitrary rules, from the exhausting performance of neighborly compliance, from the illusion that proximity equals connection. The drawer containing Marlene's letters remains closed. Some chapters end not with reconciliation but with distance, and distance, properly chosen, can be its own form of peace.